I am so excited about today. My name is Jody Luke, and I get to be the executive director of Love Does. And for so many years, people always are asking about the stories behind Love Does and the people that make it happen. And so we decided to have a podcast. And so I'm thrilled about today. And Love Does was founded by Bob Goff, who has written a ton of bestsellers. And one of them is the name of our organization. But today I get to introduce you to Maciek. And he has been a tremendous friend to Love Does and an even better friend, I think, even to me. And he is from Poland. And as we know, Poland is right next to Ukraine. Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. And I was just reading where I think 15 million refugees have crossed the border from Ukraine into Poland and have gone all over the world, but a lot of them have come through Warsaw, which is where he is from. And I remember when this all started, I was talking to Bob and we were talking about how Love Does could be helpful. And he has a billion friends. And he said, I'm going to reach out to one of them. And he did. And he said, do you know of somebody who is trustworthy? Because it's always really important. And is doing a ton of good and is making the biggest impact. And he said, of course, it's this guy named Maciek. And now knowing you for a couple years, that's really true. And you have remained on the front lines helping women and children and refugees then and now. And so it's a great honor to have you on the podcast. So welcome to the Love Does podcast, Maciek.
Thank you. Thank you, Jody. First of all, calling me a friend, not just a work colleague, means a lot. I always dreamt about having an American friend. Dreams come true. So thank you so much for being my
That's
American
right.
friend.
Anytime.
Haven't visited you yet though, but soon.
Soon. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your family and how you got involved.
Sure. I was born in Warsaw, Poland. I'm in my 40s, early 40s because I'm 39. That's what my wife says.
Looking great.
Um, and I've been married 18 years. We've got a beautiful baby daughter, Sophie. And we've been running a church that we've planted for about a decade now. So that's what we've been initially been doing in city center of Warsaw. Poland is a huge secular country with some past Catholic influences. So our mission is just to build contemporary church and to help as many people connect to God and help as many people to get through their lives with hopes and joy. So that's about it. I'm a huge fan of Ninja Turtles, and since I'm a huge fan of Ninja Turtles, I'm also a huge fan of Turtles itself. I haven't told you this before, but it's just a surprise.
Of course. Well, thank you for surprising me today with that. I appreciate it. I love your wife, Iga. I love your daughter. You have a great family. So when all of this happened in early 2022, what did you think? Like, why get involved? I mean, you've got a lot going on your plate right now as it is.
Um, well, basically, it wasn't all my idea. It's just that when you run a church and you teach people to be proactive and responsive, and you kind of grow in this need of, hey, we got to be always doing something, and we always got a response to something, whatever God is doing. It kind of came from our young adults. We run a young adults church. Average age is 26, 27. And those guys within our fellowship, they came to us straight away and said, hey, there's a war. We might go to the borders, start helping refugees come through Warsaw, find them accommodation. It started organically among the church. There's always a kudos for a pastor. If your congregation is reacting like that, it means you did a good job with people. You don't need to preach from a pulpit to pull them out. So that's how it started. And then within just a week, we found about the biggest need. And the biggest need was the formula milk that was scarce in Ukraine on the maternity wards. And we found out that there's a way we could help. We can start collecting that formula milk and we can transport it to those maternity wards. So that's what we did. That was our first thing. We connected with churches, secular people from around our church. We went to TV outlets, media outlets, social media, started asking influencers that we knew. And it kind of grew in the 3 weeks' time. We collected a lot of milk. And then Love Does came in. And then, it's just a beautiful history because on our own, we gathered around, I remember now, around maybe 11 tons, but you came over and then we managed to buy 125 tons of formula milk, and we all sent it and shipped it to Ukraine with help of some great churches here in Warsaw.
Yeah, it was amazing. You all were the hands and feet on the ground, and we had so many generous Love Does donors in this community who gave during that time, and it was awesome. I visited you, I think, in March or April of 2022, and I remember we had a driver. We were going to go to the border, and we were filming something in the car,
Yeah.
and I don't know if I thought maybe it was like a bait and switch thing, and we were on a NASCAR documentary, because I think it was like sustained speeds of 125 miles an hour to the border. My husband has the Life 360 app. I don't know if they have that in Poland, and he was checking in on me that day, and he thought that there was actually a glitch. I said, no, 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 it actually was that fast. But anyway, we got there to the border pretty quickly, and we wanted to just see how we could be helpful. And you had been at the border then, and then you were with us during that time. What were some of the things that you saw and kind of your experiences there?
Um, well, it wasn't our first time at the border. With you, it was first time, but it's always frustrating and it's painful that you see a lack of hope and fear. I mean, I'm very sensitive to fear, especially among children and vulnerable people. When you see fear, you can't forget it. When you're among the people that are fearful of their life, fearful of their future, and fear of their closest people that they don't have contact with. Like husbands who just went on the front and like they lost the connections with them. I think what always strikes you is like, my God, we live in a really broken world and we can't deny it. And it just motivates you. To any charity worker, to any person, young person who's planning to do their work around charity, I mean, don't just be theoretical. Just go there and experience real people's pain and real people's emotions, because I think we are the generation of pain killing people, and we don't want to suffer. We don't want to experience suffering. We shut our eyes when we see something obscene or bad. And seeing the suffering, honestly, the suffering of lost people who are just like, they look at you and like, help me out, man.
You know what I loved, though, is that when we were together, um, we got involved in big ways, and I knew that we would. But what was special about that day was the Kinder eggs. You remember? And I don't even remember how we came up with the idea, but as the women and children would come off the train, and it was the first stop after they had left Ukraine, and they were leaving their husbands and brothers and sons behind
Yeah.
to fight. And there was so much unknown and fear, that we would show up with these Kinder eggs, which were eggs that everybody knew there from their childhood, and had memories that were much different, that were, one of fun and just a different time. And I think there's something about trauma and intersecting people in their trauma with some kindness. And just those small acts of kindness actually make a big difference. And you
Mhm.
could see on their faces, it was like this fear and trauma. And then all of a sudden, you would give them a Kinder egg, and their whole face would light up. And it was like a time from something else. And it's really important, I think, in those times to have those intersections of hope and the power of that. And you told me a story during that time of your grandma.
Mhm.
And I think you were sharing with your church just it could feel like so overwhelming, you don't know what to do, but that you actually, the little things count and matter.
Yeah.
You remember that story you were telling?
Yeah. My grandma, she was around 5 years old, and with her mom, my grandmother, she was, hovering over the streets of Warsaw during the Second World War. Warsaw was totally destroyed, and they came from like a destroyed townhouse to go and buy a bread, and it was extremely dangerous. But my grandmother didn't want to leave my grandmother alone, so she took her with her. And on the street, Nazi soldiers start shouting at them. and start waving, and they just froze, petrified, because there's only a few things: either he's gonna murder you, shot you, either he's gonna, take you to the jail, or worst thing can happen. But then he came over and he just bent on his knee and he pulled from his jacket or whatever he had a chocolate bar to my 5-year-old grandmother, and he smiled. And the impact, he gave her that chocolate later and he just ran away, but the impact of that story is that my grandmother was telling the story as an 80-year-old woman, 90-year-old woman, on every occasion, every Christmas, every family gathering. It's just like we never heard that story, but it was so impactful. So that's what we try to do in that show. I think we just want to give them stories of hope that will just shape them and just give them some foundation of, hey, God is with you, like through the chocolate bar. I know it sounds silly sometimes for people, but that's what our faith is. Really giving a chocolate bar to those who lost hope in hard times, and those little things help so much, and they just gives us hope and the longevity of thinking, and not struggling with broken world all the time.
I love that. And then there's a refugee center, right, that was in Warsaw that I think at that time was like 5,500
Mm.
Ukrainian refugees were there, and we did a youth center with you, and then I remember last summer we were talking, and it seemed that there was hope that maybe this would be a short war, and then it became evident that this was going to be a longer war, and so you start to lose hope as
Mm.
the women and children were just sitting in this refugee center without a lot of structure. And I remember sitting on a Zoom with you and said, what if we did a school? Love has schools all over the world, and education equals hope a lot of times. And it has the chance to give structure and all sorts of great things that happen through it. And I don't, you'd never built a school. And I love it because you just said, you bet, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And then what proceeded, um, or what happened after that was you built an incredible team. Iga, your wife behind you, is always doing stuff just amazing with you. And Esther, there's really no one on earth, I think, that
No.
could have led the school better than her. You got Anne Marie, you've got Caroline, you've got this amazing team that you really brought beside you. And the school has now been going for over a year, and we're going into its next year. What are some stories, or what are some observations from that time of building this school that's on the 4th floor of this refugee center that you've come away with over the last many, many months?
Wow, yeah, that's quite a memory now. 12 months. Um, First of all, yeah, I was super scared when you asked that. I mean, taking a new challenge. I'm always a funny guy trying to pretend I'm not scared, but yeah, it was quite a challenge. But life is built on challenges like that. So we should try and think through what we do, and just don't stress too much about stuff, because not many people doing what we're doing in the world. And I think it goes to any sort of creative help that you try to give. People shouldn't just sit and theoretically plan. They should just go through. My strongest memory from that time was within the school, and when we started school, when we worked with refugee kids, and we had at that time around 1,000 of them. Not maybe, yeah, around 1,000 of them. There was this one boy for 2 weeks that was sitting in his coat and his scarf, and he was keeping his hat sometimes over, like a beanie hat, winter beanie hat over his head, and sometimes on his lap.
Mm-hmm.
And like I couldn't figure out what's wrong. Like he doesn't want to change. He doesn't want to take clothes off. I mean, his mom was powerless in that situation, and through the translator, we figured out. He said that, well, I'm always afraid that I need to run next day or next morning.
Mm.
And I really
Mm.
cried that day, because my God, just some stupid decisions of some very bad people making this boy traumatized. And what I found out later is that he finally run a business, and that was a blueberry farm business, and the Russian tanks came in the morning, and they destroyed all the farm with like 7 tanks. Probably killed some people on the way, and his family was fleeing in the morning within a car, and then that you need to come back for the rest of the workers. And that little boy with his siblings and his mom, they were walking to the border, in some sort of cold weather in February. So I'm thinking that story stick with me, and I think it's a great story. How awful it is doesn't matter, but it's a great story because it keeps motivating us to think those children had a real pain and real trauma, and education is hope. Educating them that they can do great things with with God and with their own resources that they can discover, and they can overcome the pain. It's not going to be obviously an easy job, but I'm hoping that stories like this boy will be a turning point, and he will share that, and then he will tell, but this is what happened. Some people came over, and through education and through a few years extra, I've received some sort of great, thinking about myself. How can I be a leader that can change the reality around us? I mean, those things are priceless if you look at pain and if you look at sorting out the pain.
Well, it's true, and that's a great heartbreaking story and a great reminder of why we do what we do. But I love that when we've put together the school, it hasn't just been ad hoc. It's been let's do it with excellence. You know, these kids deserve our very best. And you've created a school that is the very best. So much so that recently um, we were invited on a pretty cool Zoom. Do you want to describe that?
That was a pretty cool Zoom. That was a Zoom where
That was a pretty cool Zoom.
well,
That was in the middle of the night. I got on that Zoom. I was pretty tired, but it was a pretty cool Zoom. Tell us about it.
yeah, I loved that school in Warsaw through the grapevine, and I think through obviously a great testimony of what we're doing was recognized as one of the 18 schools outside Ukraine um, to have a special meeting with President Zelensky over the Zoom. He was obviously in Kiev, and he just wanted to encourage teachers, kids. He wanted to be present, and for Ukrainians, education is a huge thing. And now we spoke about it so many times. You think about those kids losing almost 2 years of school through COVID, and now extra year through war. I mean, we've got 3 years to help those kids, gather as much knowledge and educational revelation as possible. And you can only do it through excellence and through commitment and through love and through some extra miles that you're going to go. And I think that's recognizable. I mean, if you think that nobody sees what you're doing, and you sometimes feel like, well, I don't know if there are fruits of it. If the president of the fighting nation recognizes your local school, I mean, that's a huge thing. Somebody must have told him something, obviously. So
They told him the truth, and it's an excellent school filled with a lot of really loving, caring, qualified, awesome teachers and staff. And so it was really something else. And he was great, encouraging. He talked with every single classroom.
yeah,
And I thought it was impressive because it was in Ukrainian. And then our school teaches, I think, Ukrainian, Polish, and English. And so the common language there was English. And so Esther was talking to him in English, and he responded in perfect English back and just really thanked you all for what you were doing. So it was really kind of a moment, I think, for me.
it was for me too.
Yeah. It's funny though when I think of you, Maciek, you're kind of unconventional. You spoke to it earlier, where in Poland, a lot of people, faith is not necessarily at the top of their list of their priorities. And you're sort of an unconventional pastor. You've been on a couple reality shows in Poland, which is crazy. I think you know more about American culture than I do. You spoke of the Ninja Turtles. I think you watched American westerns growing up. You love Chick-fil-A. I feel like at least I got to teach you something about an Arnold Palmer. You didn't know what that
I
was.
didn't
Half iced tea,
now.
half lemonade. Big
It's
time.
my favorite.
Yeah, changes your world.
My favorite
Changes your
drink
world.
now. My favorite drink now.
But why or how has that been helpful? Even your TikTok connoisseur, how has that been helpful in just reaching people and meeting people where they're at? Because I think you do it really well.
Wow, thank you. Well, I guess I look at my life now and I think about my childhood, and sometimes we think that if there's a minimum input from parents, my parents were extremely busy people working, not 9 to 5, but working 12 hours a day, and kind of you sometimes think, well, this young guy life is wasted because the only the only cheapest option for me and my sister was to go back from school, reheat the dinner, and then just watch TV all the time. And that was pretty much, sadly to say, my parents were very busy people. That was pretty much 6, 7 intensive years of my primary school. But God is not wasting anything. And I think I've learned English. I was playing Sony PlayStation games all the time. And I was learning English because I wanted to play games and understand them. I was watching all the Cartoon Network shows. And now suddenly you're in a position when you want to connect with people and God is using you and you've got all the skills you need to connect with people. And I don't know if I ever told you this. I haven't spoken a full sentence till I was about 5.5.
Mm,
So,
wow.
well, my parents were thinking that, well, there's something obviously wrong with me. And doctors in 80s in Poland, they couldn't diagnose me properly. But I remember that, my dad gave me comic books and I started reading comic books. That's what switched me on. The images and whatever I was watching,
Mm.
reading, that just something did something to my brain and I started talking finally full sentences. And the reason why
And you haven't stopped since.
I haven't stopped saying, no, no, I'm preaching
I'm
on.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. But what I'm saying is like sometimes we think something in our past is wasted when, it's really one of those elements of your potential and something that God will use as an experience. And, you know, for me, easiness of connecting with you and making friends, it's not only because, I've studied something for 6 months. I think it's the life commitment of, I love American culture anyway, because it's just what you guys got and what really connected me with is all this freedom of experimenting with the great things and you always want to make them better. Like your sitcoms are the best, your stand-ups are the best, your cartoons are the best. I'm like, they influence the culture of the world and they influence a young guy like me from some sort of council houses, some condos
Mm.
somewhere in the other part of the world, to a point that God has used us to connect together and build really relevant friendship because I understand you, you can understand me, and I think nothing's wasted. And I'm really using this to connect with people. And I don't know, even going to the TV show. I've never been on a TV show before, but they asked me, so I said I will try it. And then you end up making new friends who just want to, they just want to be your friends, not because you're in the TV, but they just think like your life is so unique. You're pastoring, you're running church, you're helping refugee kids, and you've got so much to say, and then you're a bit skippy and you're just a bit awkward, and people are drawn to something that is different. So if we can encourage anybody who wants to do a change to this world, never be afraid of some awkwardness in you because this awkwardness in you is a breakthrough thing for a lot of people. That's what I would always.
You're authentic.
Yeah.
Maciek, you are completely authentic and you're relatable and you see people and um, you see people where they're at. And I think this world sometimes you can feel very overlooked and forgotten. And I think when you're in your presence, I don't think anyone feels like that. I think it's probably too, I think of the women in the refugee center. I think that time can feel like you're on hold with your life. And what I've loved during my time there, we were together again this last spring,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of widows now at the refugee center.
Yeah.
And we put together a luncheon for them with Never Alone Widows and Love Does and the amazing team, your amazing team. And I think a lot of women were really encouraged during that time. But I think about some of the women that even there, they use their gifts and talents to just make whatever situation better. Love Does is a champion of women all over the world. I think about our Women's Resource Center in the Dominican Republic. We have some really resourceful women. And I remember walking around the refugee center and there was artwork in different places. And there was somebody who was an interior designer and an artist. And so they use their gifts and talents, even while they're time at a refugee center, to make that place homey and feel comfortable and safe for the other women and the kids that were there. And I think you just bring your gifts and talents to wherever you're at, and you can even do it in that environment. What are some other stories? I think we've talked about them even at that refugee um, women's luncheon that has been encouraging as you've gotten to know some of the women there and sort of the struggles that they're having? Have there been any encouraging stories that have come out of it?
Yeah. Before I'm going to say that, I just need to tell you this, that what I appreciate about you, Jody, is that you have created a culture of constant encouragement around you, and people feel really encouraged and it's loved. I've got so many Zooms all the time, and like, you don't look forward to 75% of those Zooms because, it's just like a checklist of things you got to discuss. With you, it's always like you don't say no to things. You're really, really adventurous with your approach to helping, and I guess it comes from Bob and all the culture you have
Hmm.
created among Love Does. But saying no is the least thing. You say, let's hold on, let's hold that thought, let's figure it out. And even the widows thing, that was one of another things that, like, I look forward. I'm like, the issue we had, that the whole preparation issue for that is that
Yeah.
a lot of Ukrainian women, and that comes from a culture, they don't want to admit that they are widows. It's a shameful issue within the culture of Eastern Europe. um, you're dependent on your husbands. You don't want to be called widow. You don't want to be alone. It comes with a lot of risk, to those women when they admit that. So I think what I remember about it is not many women I've spoke to that day, because I was so busy with you working around the logistics. But I remember our team has found a way of encouraging them, and we sometimes laugh at food. That is like, oh yeah, it's a nice thing. Always it's great to have a food in the background or whatever. Food is actually the most crucial thing for those women to come over for that lunch on. They know there were going to be tables full of great snacks, great meals. Um, you know, I mean, we sometimes think that, it's just a side thing. All we want to really do, we want to preach Jesus. Well, not really, because the food is the Jesus itself. I think, well, I'm not going to be heretic now, but what I'm going to try to say is, like, fellowship and communion that we created, I think, open up a lot of hearts that night. We had so many people, listening to gospel for the first time, and, finding some hope and responding to it. And I think that couldn't happen without creating the right environment. That's what I remember. I think it's very hard to get somebody unless you invite them to the table. The longer the table, the better, as my wife says. So,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, it was an encouraging afternoon. It really was. And I think it was your idea to highlight some of the women that were there. I think there was, if I remember right, one of the refugees, she was a teacher
yeah,
in Ukraine.
yeah,
And so she became a teacher in our school and was really fabulous. And you really wanted to make sure that a couple of those women, if not all of them, were really highlighted and encouraged in that time. So it's, and we have a lot coming up, right? We've been asked to potentially start a new school in Ukraine.
yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, through all the work we already did, I think connections open up, and people look at Love That School in Warsaw as some sort of a modeling school for the refugee kids and IDPs, which are the kids that are internally displaced within the Ukraine. Just to give an image, it's like moving the kids from east side to the west side, and those kids are still refugees inside their own country. So the whole idea is that we're just going to copy and paste, not everything, but copy and paste the model, and we're just going to have some good, Christian values, leadership teaching, and we're just going to recreate a school model for those kids who just been lost and, dispatched from their own families and, past life. So that's in plans. That's what we're working on. We've got some challenges coming in that we want to resolve, like the high schoolers here in Poland, Ukrainian high schoolers. We know that they're struggling to get to the Polish schools because our system is not ready. I mean, we spoke about it so many times. It was a flood of millions of refugees, and now Warsaw has got extra million Ukrainians living in it. Just for
Mm-hmm.
example, Warsaw was 2.5 million people city. Now it's a 3.5 million city. You can't just recreate one third of amenities in a year or 18 months. So we want to be on the front of resolving that issue, and we figuring out and we believing that we're going to find a solution for high schoolers, and we're just going to, get them into education. So yeah, there's so many things that can, if you see that an opportunity, opportunities are always where the problems are. So
I love that. I always think of the Mr. Rogers quote. when scary things are happening, look for the helpers,
Yeah.
and you are a helper. And so I think, Maciek, you learn a lot about people's character
Mm.
in times of crisis and about people. And I think you have proven to be over and over and over a champion of refugees and widows. And a lot of what we do in Love Does is informed by Matthew 25 and the hungry and the thirsty and the sick and the stranger and the naked. And don't forget those that are in prison. And, that where you do for them, you do for me is what Jesus says. And it's a lot about what we do. And so I just want to thank you. Thank you for your time today. I think you are a beautiful doer. You are love in action. You are really are a dear friend,
Thank
and you,
you.
I think, are my most fun partner. That's for sure. So I'm really looking forward to kind of what we have coming up, and I appreciate your time today. It's huge because I know you're super busy, and I too look forward to our next Zooms for sure.
Thanks, Jody. I mean, like you are a stellar example of top-notch encourager, and I never want to lose you from my contact list. If something happens, I need your encouragement more than anything because you are there. So, yeah, for those who don't know you, I mean, if you're just gonna call Jody, Jody will always encourage you, even if she don't know you very well.
I love that. I'm going to take it. Top notch encourager. That's the best. Hey, thanks, Maciek,
Thank you.
and many blessings on you and your family. And then we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Talk soon. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.